Testing. Can everyone hear from there?
Okay, if everybody that wants to sit has a seat, we'll get started here. If you don't want to sit, you can stand. These proceedings of the hearing examiner for the City of Oak Harbor are now in session. My name is Michael Bobank, and I am the Oak Harbor hearing examiner. For the record, this is Tuesday, June 18, 2019. The time is a little past 1 p.m. and we are located in the Elks Lodge in Oak Harbor. The matter set for hearing at this time is a site plan review and associated requested permits for a boundary line adjustment, landscape plan, and a transportation concurrency. The project is a request for site plan approval for the construction of Pioneer Way housing project. It's a 51-unit residential and commercial mixed-use proposal for a building to be located at 601 Pioneer Way, Oak Harbor, Washington. The purpose of the development is to provide affordable low housing and a 900 square foot, that hasn't changed, retail space. The hearing examiner file at this time contains only what the staff has put into the file. As far as we know, that's everything in the staff's record. That would be the staff report and all the attachments. These are available online if you want to see what's in there and what isn't in there at any point. I'm going to admit all those into the record at this time. I will accept additional exhibits during the hearing if you have any. These might be in the form of letters, documents, photographs, etc. If there are any, I'll bring them to my attention when you testify, and we will mark and admit them into the record. Testimony at the hearing today is going to be under oath. I think to start off with, I'm going to administer a general oath, so I would ask anybody who thinks they may speak today to please stand at this time and raise your right hand. That includes attorneys. Sir? Yes, it does.
Oh, you want to?
You're going to tell me any facts, you're going to be under oath. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm any testimony that you give will be the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, and if anybody decides to testify that didn't take the oath, please let me know during the hearing. We're going to proceed in the normal manner for these hearings. Although this is an abnormal crowd for one of them. We're going to start off with the presentation from the applicant, and then I will have staff give their comments and presentation, and then I will open it up for comments from the public. For everybody's information, I have reviewed everything in the file. And it's a 700 and some page file, but a lot of it is duplicate reports and some form letters. But I am familiar with what's in the file. I'm familiar with the public comments in the file. And so you can take that into account when you testify. When we get to public testimony, I would ask that you keep in mind what's already in the record, what other people have said, and just to be a little bit brief if you're repeating things that other people have said, so that we'll get out of here sometime this afternoon. So, having said all of that, who's going to represent the applicant? Identify yourself, name and address, and to the most part we're going to use the microphone there. No comments from the audience. We're trying to make a required formal recording of these proceedings, and this is an open record hearing to produce a formal record for the city council to take into account when they make final determination on this project. So we are formulating a written formal record that can be reproduced in case somebody takes us to court at some point. So I would ask that we be real careful. Comments, we need to get them recorded the best we can. So we'll try to make them from the microphone and no comments from the audience. State your name, please.
Mr. Examiner, my name is Richard Hill, 701 Fifth Avenue in Seattle. I'm counsel for Lehigh, the applicant.
And you may proceed as you choose here. We're pretty open about how that goes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Examiner. The Lehigh very much appreciates your consideration today of Lehigh's applications for a BLA, site plan and landscape plan approval for its Pioneer Way housing proposal. Lehigh has reviewed the staff report, which Lehigh believes thoroughly sets forth how the proposal complies with applicable city regulations, ordinances, and guidelines. Lehigh endorses the analysis set forth in the staff report and agrees with all of the proposed conditions set forth in the staff report. We will have one witness today, Mr. Examiner, David Cutler with Northwest Studio. Northwest Studio is the project architect. Mr. Cutler will present a PowerPoint that describes the proposal and demonstrates its compliance with city guidelines. Before doing so, I would like to offer several exhibits for the record. I've prepared hard copies for the examiner and have provided hard copies of these exhibits to staff. If I may approach the examiner, I'll provide him a copy of the exhibits and then for the record identify what they are.
Certainly approach, we're not that formal. Does staff have copies of all
Staff
this?
does. Yes,
And can we identify them for the record?
I will. First, Mr. Examiner, there's a packet of 6 exhibits. The top is a letter of support from Vincent Ho. The second is a document that sets forth questions and answers relating to the April 11th community meeting sponsored by Lehigh and the city. The questions set forth in the second document are questions raised by the community at the community meeting. Again, for the examiner, that first packet with the clip on it that I gave you that has the Vincent Ho letter on top, the second document beginning at page 2 of that is where the questions and answers. Are we finding that? May I assist the
I have a document that says Northwest Studio, selected experience.
I will get to that, Mr. Baumann.
Well, that's the
If you
second one I
look at
have. I have another one that says selected experience. Looks like the same one.
Yes.
Well, that's normal for this file, everything 2 or 3 times.
Mr. Baumann, you may
Where's the second one?
Okay. If I may approach.
You may?
There are 6 documents here, Mr. Baumann.
So there's 6 experience. Okay.
I apologize for the confusion.
And could you try to take notes on what these are so you can identify them for the exhibit log?
So, Mr. Examiner, again, the first document is a letter of support from Vincent Ho. The second is a collection of questions and answers relating to the April 11th community meeting held by Lehigh and the city. The questions are questions that were raised by the community and the answers were provided by Lehigh. The third document, Mr. Examiner, is the Cultural Resources Report on the proposal that was submitted to the city at the city's request. That was part of the city file, but was not included in the staff report, we assume inadvertently. The fourth document is the unanticipated discovery protocol prepared by the Cultural Resources Consultant. This protocol is prepared by the consultant to deal with any unanticipated archaeological discoveries that are unearthed, so to speak, during the process of construction. And then the fifth document is the Cultural Resources Report on the archaeological monitoring of the geotechnical boreholes that were bored in connection with project review. All of these cultural resources related documents are also in the city's files, we understand. The next document, Mr. Examiner, which the examiner mentioned a moment ago, is the curriculum vitae of Northwest Studio of Mr. Aaron Young, one of the project architects, and of Mr. David Cutler, another of the project architects. The sixth document is a copy of the PowerPoint that Mr. Cutler will present today. It will be on the screen, but we thought it would be helpful for the examiner to have a hard copy of the PowerPoint. The final two documents are a more legible copy, and those are the 11 by 17 packets that are to the examiner's left on the table. More legible copies and slightly enlarged of attachment 3 to the staff report. That's it, Mr. Examiner. Attachment 3 to the staff report. It is in the staff report, but at least for my eyes, was somewhat difficult to read. And so we thought it would be helpful, hopefully, for the examiner to have a more legible copy of it. It also includes both responses to the, I believe, the second round of comments and the third round of comments. With that, Mr. Examiner, Lehigh calls David Cutler. I will ask just a handful of preliminary questions to Mr. Cutler, so I'll be standing next to him. After that, I will cede the podium to Mr. Cutler.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
As you went through the staff report with your clients, did you find any factual inaccuracies in the staff report?
Mr. Examiner, my client has carefully reviewed the staff report. It appears to be accurate in all of its factual statements.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I will call Mr. David Cutler. And I just want to make sure that this is being recorded. Can everybody hear? Right. Okay, Mr. Cutler, would you briefly describe to the examiner your name, spell it, your background, and your role with the Pioneer Way proposal?
Sure. My name is David Cutler. Last name C-U-T-L-E-R. I have 20 years of experience on building types that range from houses to housing, offices to education, and urban design and planning from small towns to cities. I received a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Notre Dame and a Master of Architecture and Urban Design from Harvard University. I'm a partner with Aaron Young at Northwest Studio. Together, we are responsible for all the projects that come out of our office. Between the two of us, we have taught graduate level courses, lectured, or served as guest critics at Washington State University, the University of Washington, Washington University, University of Arkansas, Yale, Harvard, and Columbia. We bring experience on projects that have won design awards from British Columbia to Oklahoma. I'm a licensed architect in Washington and California. My partner Aaron is licensed in Washington, Oklahoma, and New York. Northwest Studio is the applicant for the project, representing the owner, Lehigh. We're a practice of architects and urban designers focused on the fundamentals in design that shape quality in public space and buildings.
With that, Mr. Cutler, I'm going to cede the podium to you to go ahead and make your PowerPoint presentation. And before you do that, would you please describe the program of the proposal, what is sought to be developed, as well as the design intent?
Yep. So the project is a mixed-use building on a 1.15 acre site. The specifics of the program, Mr. Hearing Examiner, are included in the submittal materials, but generally it includes 51 units with attainable rents for people with 60% of area median income or less. This would equate to the salaries for jobs that we are all familiar with. school teachers, firefighters, grocery store clerks, retail workers. Some of the units will be offered to military veterans who lack a safe and decent place to live. Over 1,000 gross square feet of pedestrian-oriented retail will be provided in 2 prominently located tenant spaces. This is increased from the initial package, Mr. Examiner. Meeting and gathering spaces for residents and community members, offices for building management, and 77 off-street parking stalls in conformance with the code, 48 of which are enclosed under the building, and 29 of which are located away from the street in a landscape parking area. All the parking is accessed from Bayshore through an intervening easement over another property facing Bayshore. The intent of this project is to provide new opportunities for residents and businesses designed to be seamlessly woven into the fabric of the city and the Pacific Northwest environment.
So,
Do you have questions?
Yeah, did you say the commercial space has been enlarged?
The gross square footage of the commercial spaces, I believe, just over 1,000 square feet.
And that's inside?
And that's interior, correct.
Go ahead.
So I'd just like to walk you through briefly the organization of attachment 3. And you can see on the screen there's a slide that describes how that booklet is organized. And this is just for your information and further review. You'll see that on each page we organized our response to...
Mr. Cutler, perhaps you could refer to the page in...
Yes, I believe it's right up at the front, maybe page 2.
I have it.
Yeah, okay. Each packet that we provided there, that packet and the second one, responds to comments received from the city in the order they were received, demonstrating our compliance with all the applicable city requirements and recommendations. The city requested that we show our work in this process after the site plan review initial submittal, and we jumped at the chance. On each page, you'll see the city comment provided in black at the left. It's provided in full and without edit. Our narrative response is provided next to that in blue. Any text relating to the zoning code or other applicable requirements is listed in gray in italics, and is followed by a series of explanatory diagrams that describe our intent and approach to meeting those requirements of the code. So with that, I'd like to walk through the project.
And then, Mr. Cutler, for the record, the PowerPoint presentation is, there's a hard copy that was given to the examiner.
Correct. You have a hard copy of the presentation in front of you. It's an 8.5 by 11 double-sided. So first of all, thank you to the hearing examiner. Thank you to the city staff who have reviewed the project and provided feedback very constructively throughout, and to the community members who provided great comments and insight so far. This presentation is intended to be an overview of the project. It uses materials already provided, excerpted for clarity. What I'd like to do is walk us all through the uniqueness and the challenges of the site, and our approach to meeting the intent and the requirements of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, zoning, design guidelines, and the comprehensive plan, drawing from the heritage and history of the city and region in terms of its materials, its architecture, and its landscapes. First, a wonderful and challenging site, and I'm going to start with the wonderful part first. It's always good to start on a high note. On the left, you'll see a 15-minute walk shed located from the site, which is here. It shows that most things are within an easy walk of future residents. By most things, I mean daily needs. Groceries, banks, restaurants and cafes, parks and open space, even schools are not far away. For residents without a car, the downtown transit station is also less than a block away, and bike lanes or steps out the front door. This site is really a wonderful chance to increase access to opportunity for residents and for business. For all of our projects, we begin by studying the history and heritage of the place. This is the site in the earliest days of Oak Harbor, situated just on the western edge of the downtown Main Street along the original waterfront, or buildings perched out over the water's edge. Today, the site still functions as a link between the island environment and the downtown corridor. This is a figure ground plan done at the very early stages of the project, showing the footprints of the downtown buildings in black and our site in blue. You'll notice that the site is located right at the point of transition, a place between where the historic downtown storefronts reach out to meet the street, and where newer development to the west steps back to accommodate grade changes or parking or signage. When we zoom in, we notice that the site is located where the green spaces of Pioneer Way intersect, forming an important link between Windjammer Park, Hal O'Malley Park, and the waterfront trail system, and of course Southeast Pioneer Way, which is there. Our goal was to mark this place with a mix of new uses, from street activating retail to housing, from new landscapes and connections to areas along the sidewalk to pause, rest, and enjoy the life of the street. This is the view from Hal O'Malley Park. The building is intended to form a waypoint for pedestrians on Bayshore and the park looking to make their way up to the main street, to Pioneer Way. Now for a bit of the challenges. It's of course a challenging site as well. We have to deal with complex fundamental issues which will address building orientation and configuration and just basic constructability. Questions such as, how do we deal with a floodplain, a high water table, and difficult soils? How do we think ahead to give us the best chance of preserving and protecting cultural resources, some of which in the past have been found on Pioneer Way? How do we address the presence of loose fill and underground storage tanks, which are located on the former gas station site here, where the current bookshop is, the bench of the site? And how do we most appropriately meet the recently constructed Pioneer Way street infrastructure, the sidewalks, the railings, some of which are 4 to 5 feet beyond the property line and well above the grade of the site, and as the city noted in its staff report, through no fault of the applicant, prevent connection to the sidewalk everywhere, essentially, but along the bench? Well, we do that by drawing from a rich history. If we study the city's beginnings, the area around Mailer Dock offers a wonderful example for how to build. Vernacular buildings lift themselves up out of the water elegantly, allowing the tides and sea to move beneath. To construct on this site, we've taken a similar tack, lifting up the residential portions of the building on stilts to allow for parking and landscapes to inhabit the floodplain below, and residents to live above with views of the water to the south, Pioneer Way to the north, and sunsets to the west. For the retail portions of the building, we've drawn from historic waterfront typologies as well, where buildings function really just by gently resting their chin on the street edge. The back of house area is typically extended out over the water. We can actually see this clearly in old photos of Pioneer Way itself. Buildings with false fronts, essentially tall parapets concealing a gable end roof beyond, would really reach out to draw people in, presenting an outsized presence to the street edge. The composition of horizontal and vertical siding was a really wonderful and eclectic way that lent a richness to the street. Remembering back to that site plan, the challenges slide, particularly to the bench along Pioneer Way, the one point along the sidewalk where we can rest our chin, we located our retail space, reaching right up to the back of the sidewalk. A small plaza at the top of a new hill climb that reaches all the way down to Hal O'Malley Park is just there on the left. The layered composition of cladding types and orientations indicate a sense of texture and, we hope, richness. Materials and landscapes. As architects, we like to explore and learn from our environment. Studying the Old Town neighborhood, we see that historic structures along Pioneer Way and at Fidalgo and Dock, I always mess that one up, even newer buildings such as the coffee shop, these all offer a working vocabulary of materials that we can draw from for walls, openings, and roofs in a way that is context appropriate. Cedars, even landscape cedars in Windjammer Park, Gary Oaks and Smith Park, these all offer clues for landscapes which can weather the local climate. In our project, we embraced this local palette and paired it with additional complementary materials to create a coordinated approach that conveys a cohesive design. A corrugated metal roof is durable and sustainable. It's light, reduces heat island. Clear cedar, stained cedar, anodized aluminum, and painted materials for the building siding offer rich patina and allow the grain of the wood to shine through, which presents an elegant face to the city. And in terms of the base of the building, a painted steel understory complemented with rock-filled gabion walls, cast-in-place concrete, and interwoven gravel pathways will anchor the building in the landscape. The landscape itself has been chosen to reflect the Northwest climate and the waterfront location. Gary oaks, shore pines, and an understory of native planting create a great approach that will thrive in this environment. When we look at these pieces together, we notice that the components establish a coherent design language that speaks to both the physical and the natural environment, creating an engaging and verdant material family. In fact, in this project, the urban design, architecture, and landscapes we feel are interwoven, in keeping with what we saw as the intent of the city's design guidelines and comprehensive plan. Looking at the plan of the site now, we can see that clusters of shore pines here along Pioneer Way have been organized along the street edge to allow the landscape and the building facades to work together, creating a rhythmic experience of depth and materiality along Southeast Pioneer Way, especially where the sidewalk is located off of the street edge and cannot be engaged. Not only are shore pines a native species, but the selection of an evergreen will keep this structure year-round. In acknowledgement of kind of its special place within the city, the project will use Gary oaks to mark key building entries and focal points on the site. At the retail spaces at the top and the bottom of the new hill climb provided on the site, at the primary lobby and residential entry and community courtyard along Pioneer Way, and one at a private residential entrance to the parking area. All this about siding materials, but what about the architecture itself? If anyone has ever visited the great parks in the area, they'll know some of these buildings. The Civilian Conservation Corps buildings in Deception Pass offer a wonderfully beguiling, kind of rich experience for how to work with light and roofs and simple structure. The slipped ridge here in this building introduces light deep into the interior and also provides for venting. You'll notice that a similar approach has been used in downtown Pioneer Way within the Old Town neighborhood, First United Methodist Church. The project references these precedents, slipping the gable ends of the building at the west and the east, and also at the south where the common amenities are located here. It also slips the ridge along the length of the building to provide syncopation when viewed from Pioneer Way and Bayshore. We've paid close attention to the details too. Again, studying back to classic Pacific Northwest structures, rafter tails, and overhangs. The expression of the structure has been incorporated into the design of the project to create texture and small-scale visual interest, and it's a simple practical matter to allow for deeper overhangs that are more climate appropriate for this area. We also look to local buildings, this one along Bayshore. The remarkable siding pattern provided inspiration for how we would articulate and differentiate between stories on the building with horizontal cladding. Another building on Barrington Drive that provides a similar approach, but using verticality to establish depth and shadowing with vertical battens. In fact, we studied every building on Pioneer Way, photographing the entire street length on both sides to understand fenestration patterns, color, materials, siding, roof heights, general massing. It really helped us to understand the place. One of the things that this revealed was the predominance of oranges and rusts, reds, a deepness that provided a richness and warmth that we really thought was intriguing. The project's retail frontage, right there on the bench, links into this tradition. It is stained deep red, helping to tie it seamlessly into the fabric of the street, while also marking a point of transition between the traditional Main Street and the more contemporary one. With color, it also helps to signify that an opportunity to connect to the parks and city beach beyond exists. Like any good fishing stream, a good retail street has eddies, places where you can take a step back, pause, and rest. This is a retail entry, a recessed retail entry on Pioneer Way. We took a similar approach, setting back our primary residential entry in the same manner, offering a way for the public-facing and community-oriented portions of the building to have a presence along Pioneer Way, to engage visually by virtue of allowing the space to stop and pause along the sidewalk. It also allows for privacy, safety, security, and a bit of separation for residents and their families. It has the added benefit, in this case, of also providing a retail eddy just where one is needed at the location of our retail frontage. All this to say that our goal is ultimately to make a place for retail tenants. As I mentioned, over 1,000 gross square feet of new retail and critical pedestrian connections, further linking Pioneer Way to the waterfront. And a place for new families and residents, where rents are attainable, where access to daily needs is within a convenient walk or bus ride, where landscapes and the environment are interwoven, and thoughtfully designed common spaces offer opportunities for the community to gather and share in the life of the downtown. Thank you.
Mr. Cutler, could you briefly just describe the boards that are to...
Yeah, sure. You've seen many of these boards in the presentations and other forums. The one on the far left is a view to the west-southwest down Pioneer Way from Eli Street. A closer-in view is the one just to the right of that, looking at the primary residential entry and community courtyard behind that frontage retail piece. The third one from the left is the common amenity space portion of the building and lower retail space fronting Bayshore. You're standing actually in Howard Valley Park in this image looking up at the building. A detailed view of the Pioneer Way facade, a even closer and detailed view of the eaves and rafter tails and roof condition that will ring the building at all ends but the gable. And the board that we hope you can come up and touch, actually, this is a materials board that we provided to the city so they could better understand our approach and intent to really providing a rich level of material for the project.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler. Just a couple of closing words for the open presentation, Mr. Examiner. Mr. Cutler, of course, is available to answer any questions the examiner may have. There are also representatives of Lehigh if the examiner has any questions of the applicant itself. With respect to public hearing today, the applicant respectfully requests the opportunity to provide a response at the conclusion of the hearing if the examiner deems that that's an acceptable thing to do. The Lehigh very much, again, appreciates the examiner's consideration of this proposal. Also very much appreciates staff's thorough and thoughtful evaluation of the proposal and asks the examiner respectfully to adopt the recommendation of the staff and recommend to the council approval of the proposal with the conditions suggested by staff. Thank you.
Staff comments?
Ray Lindenberg, Associate Planner with the City of Oak Harbor. We do not have any additions to the staff report or any changes, and we stand by what's in the staff report, including the attachments.
Anything else you want to add at this time?
At this time, no.
Okay, well, we'll go through the public testimony and see if you have any response to it and if they have no questions. Okay, who's the brave person that wants to go first?
See how the sign-in sheets.
document. I don't know how to number it because of what we are, but are these your comments today?
Yes, my name is Ferg Johns, and I too am an architect.
Yes, I think I read
These are my comments.
some of the materials. Would you give me your address, please?
Yes, my address is 1348 Polnell Avenue, Oak Harbor, Washington.
Email like the ham?
Excuse me?
How do you spell it?
P-O-L-N, no, Papa Oscar November, oh, P-O-L, I'm sorry, Papa Oscar Lima, November Echo Lima Lima. Have been in the capacity of working with Main Street, and that's the capacity in which I speak. Nice to hear Mr. Cutler's presentation today. I identify. I guess I'm supposed to say what my credentials are. I am an architect. I'm retired mostly. I'm a professor emeritus of architecture from Montana State. I'm a distinguished professor of architecture of the American Collegiate Society of Architectural Educators. I'm a fellow in the American Institute of Architects. First thing, I'm going to go a little bit out of order on the thing that I got. I'd first like to talk a little bit about the zoning regulations for the Central Business District, which are very similar to those of many small towns and cities when they're struggling to revitalize their downtown, their historic retail center. They aren't particularly unique or obscure, but they're pretty common and obvious. And some of the regulations that apply here are that mixed-use buildings are required in the Central Business District, but not necessarily in the CBD1 or the CBD2 sub-districts. So the question I would have is the Lehigh proposal a mixed-use building, or is it a residential building with an accessory retail use appended? Mixed use, definition from the code, means properties on which various uses such as office, commercial, institutional, and residential are combined in a single building on a single site in an integrated development project with significant functional interrelationships and a coherent physical design. Accessory use means a use that is incidental and subordinate to the principal use and is located on the same lot or in the same building as the principal use. Primary use means a principal or predominant use to which the property is or may be devoted and to which all other uses on the premises are accessory. The primary use of this building is residential. The retail area is clearly incidental to the primary use. The municipal code permits residential as a primary use in the Central Business District only in CBD1 and CBD2 sub-districts. The proposed project is not in either of these sub-districts. Dwelling units are permitted on the ground level of a building in the historic section of the Central Business District only if A, the site is mixed use with multiple street frontages, and B, does not front on Pioneer Way. The proposed building, in my opinion, does not meet the code definition of a mixed-use building, but is primarily a residential building with accessory retail use. I'm sorry, I don't want to not tell the truth. I had only about 900 square feet, but I'm told that we actually have all of 1,000 square feet of retail in the building. Rather tenuously connected architecturally to an otherwise totally residential structure. That's all the retail there is. The site currently fronts on Pioneer Way. The building as designed will legally front on Pioneer Way because it has to by code. It has to front on some street and will visually in front Pioneer Way for its entire length, which is much longer than any other single building in the downtown historic district. And without the approval of the requested boundary line adjustment, which I'd like to speak to later, will fully front on Pioneer Way. It does not front on any other street. Access from Bayshore is by easement, and so it does not, in fact, have the required multiple street frontages. Lehigh is, in my opinion, obviously seeking a boundary line adjustment solely for the purpose of attempting to circumvent city regulations and ordinances, including the important and mandatory code requirement for, in quotes, combining retail and visitor-oriented activities on the ground floor with office, retail, and residential units above. That means the entire ground floor of this building should be retail and visitor-oriented activities. And in order to further violate the code by allowing them to locate dwelling units on the ground level of a site that is historically and currently fronts on Pioneer Way. Dwelling units as the primary use of any site in the Central Business District are permitted only in the CBD 1 and CB2 districts. It's not possible to maintain that the primary proposed use of this building and site is anything other than dwelling units. We talked about the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan says, among other things, and I'm just summarizing these, new development should be compatible with the character of the neighborhood. Although they studied the neighborhood, I think just to look at the elevations that they presented show you, when you take a look at the length of this building, that it is not quite in keeping with the character of the retail neighborhood. That development will be pedestrian scaled and buildings be close to the street. That mixed use be promoted in commercial districts. That quality development be supported in Old Town. That development be required to adhere to design guidelines for a pedestrian-friendly environment. Again, that buildings be located close to the street, that visually interesting facades and people spaces be encouraged, that the historic character of downtown and harborside shops be respected and reinforced through the design guidelines and design review, and that pedestrian-oriented commercial and cultural opportunities be encouraged along the street. Excerpts from the Oak Harbor Design Guidelines, then, which they're required to follow, say, buildings shall be placed at the front setback line. Buildings shall incorporate materials and details that are fitting with the Pacific Northwest and appropriate for the existing design characteristics and goals stated in the comprehensive plan. I guess that's a matter of opinion as to whether that's happened. Building entrances, walkways, and facades shall be designed to relate to the neighboring buildings to establish a coherent development pattern. Incorporate similar complementary patterns from existing developments such as elevation, outline, window treatment, entrances, and roof lines, so forth and so on. Window displays are required over the majority of the front facade, 75%. Neighborhood context. Buildings must be located on the street frontage property line. Weather protection shall be provided along building frontages and shall be placed no more than 15 feet above the ground. All awnings and or canopies must be designed to complement the aesthetic and architectural characters of the Harborside neighborhood. Buildings shall respect the architectural character of the neighborhood with complementary choices for materials, building scale, proportion, and architectural details. The question has arisen, what weight should we give to the design guidelines? Are these requirements or are they just simply suggestions? The municipal codes clearly states that the word shall is always mandatory and not merely directive. Later on, it states development shall be in accordance with the provisions of the Oak Harbor Commercial and Industrial Design Guidelines. The code also states that all the design guidelines apply to new construction. The design guidelines are intended to supplement the design standards from the City of Oak Harbor's zoning ordinance. Where the design guidelines and the zoning ordinance standards conflict, there's no provision in the design guidelines. The most restrictive shall apply. I don't feel that the project really makes a serious attempt to comply with the current Oak Harbor design guidelines. Just looking at it. The excuses are many. The site slopes. There's a railing. The property line is not at the sidewalk edge. The closest neighbors are ugly too, and so on and so on. Similar challenges are quite typical of downtown projects in every town and every city in the country. Surely a Seattle-based architect and developer will have dealt with a sloping site with street front retail before tackling this project.
Sir, insults aren't necessary.
Excuse me?
I said insults are not necessary.
Oh, yes, sir. Before tackling this project, there are problems. These are problems that are routinely solved during the design process. It's not. I don't think that it is that Lehigh cannot solve these problems. I think they've done so in many other projects that I've seen of theirs. They could easily step the retail storefronts required on Pioneer down the slope, remove the existing railing, and either build to or widen the sidewalk, for example. So it's not really a case of can't. It's a case of, in this case, won't. And I think there probably are good reasons for why they don't want to do that. But I wouldn't speculate on that. And regarding the disapproval or approval of the request for a boundary line adjustment, the procedure for requesting a boundary line adjustment is contained in the short subdivisions chapter of the municipal code. This section gives the director the authority to approve or disapprove a short subdivision and states that he may approve, note the use of the word may, which I assume means he may approve or disapprove a boundary line adjustment. So approval isn't automatic. Request for a boundary line adjustment must show a result consistent with the general design standards of the municipal code, development regulations, and the comprehensive plan. The proposed realignment of the side lot lines does not appear to comply with the Oak Harbor Municipal Code 2150-102 and 5, or with the general criteria specified for evaluating short subdivisions. To meet the general design standards of the zoning code, or after a view of the characteristics of the proposal to conform to the comprehensive plan, or to serve the public interest. These are evaluation criteria the director is instructed to use as listed in the code chapter that describes an application for a boundary line adjustment. While providing affordable housing is certainly in the public interest, I would never argue that. I've done a lot of affordable housing myself. It should be noted that housing of the type proposed is, in fact, both encouraged and easily accomplished without code variance or accommodation in CBD1 and CBD2 subdistricts, which are very nearby. Suitable vacant property in these subdistricts was and still is on the market within a couple of blocks of this site and have the water view and all of those other access to local amenities that have been described earlier. So it's simply a question of whether it makes sense to run around all of these other city regulations in order to get a project located on Pioneer when it's clear that the intent of the code is to not have residential projects of this type, this scale, located on Pioneer unless there is retail on the ground floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. No, I'm not going to put up with it, folks. Okay, this is not a place where we vote by clapping. So, I want to listen. So, ma'am, your name?
My name is Joanne Pellant, P-E-L-A-N-T,
And your address?
180 Parker Road, Cookville, Washington.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Examiner. Thank you to the city staff and to the community. My name is Joanne Pellant, and I work with the Department of Human Services as the Housing Resource Coordinator. And today I just want to make 3 points. First, I want to speak to the need. And I'll point to 2 specific housing needs assessments that have been done. One by the Department of Commerce that came out in 2016, and then a more recent one that was done by the Island County Planning Department as part of the update to the county housing element. Both identified Island County needing approximately 3,000 units affordable to households earning $50,000 and below, which makes up a significant portion of our workforce. This development that Lehigh is proposing of 50 units of rental housing, half designated for workforce at the mid-range of our area median income, and the other half are veterans who also may be part of our workforce, seems a step in the right direction of beginning to build capacity to begin to meet the housing and population needs that exist currently in our community in a rather dramatic way. In addition, with the ability for Lehigh to proceed to develop additional multifamily housing, proved by the actual development taking place, it signals to the larger market rate development community and other regional affordable housing developers that in fact Island County and the City of Oak Harbor is a development-friendly community and a place to build, where change is moderate and protection of our county's beautiful assets are actually not in opposition to development, but in fact in concert with such efforts to replenish opportunity, energize communities, and most importantly, to prevent the export of our workforce to live off island, taking their consumer dollars with them. This development, along with others needed in the future, will ultimately contribute to healthier families, resulting in healthier communities and a stronger workforce that are all known stimulants for economic development. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And we strongly support this and ask that you would approve the application.
You're going to have to ask City Council for that. Next. Sir.
My name's George Saul, S like Sam, A-U-L. And I live at 955 Condra Lane in Oak Harbor. And I know this is going to disappoint everybody, but I'm not an architect. I am a veteran. I'm a member of the American Legion. I'm a member of the Navy League. With the Whidbey Community Foundation, I'm also a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm here, Mr. Commissioner, to express my support for the Lehigh application. As Joanne Pellin just stated, the county's identified a need of 3,000 affordable housing units. The city's comp plan imposes on the city an obligation to ensure that projects such as this proposal that provide low-income housing are approved. Thank you for your consideration of my request to approve this application.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, my name is Jim Slowick. I'm a former mayor of Oak Harbor, and I too am a veteran.
Your last name?
Slowick, S-L-O-W-I-K. I live at 746 Southwest Erie, Oak Harbor. And I want to congratulate and thank the City of Oak Harbor for recommending approval on this project. And I urge your support and approval as well. Thank you.
That thing's live, isn't it?
It's because it's in front of the speaker.
Ah.
Good afternoon. My name is Kristen Skinner. I'm an attorney in Oak Harbor. I represent at this presentation the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also here representing the Oak Harbor Main Street. I'm not here to testify in support or provide testimony as such, and I think it's important that we note for the record that the hearing today is not about the economic nature of the proposed occupants, whether the occupants are veterans, whether this will promote healthy families. It's my understanding that you're here today to make a recommendation after taking testimony and exhibits regarding the legality of the proposed boundary line adjustment and the approval of the site plan. There are a couple of other issues that are before you today that we are not addressing. We simply want you to consider making a recommendation to reject the boundary line adjustment and also reject the site plan as presented. I don't need to reiterate the comments that were made by the gentleman who spoke about the various concerns that a number of citizens have regarding the comprehensive plan and the ordinance that talks about what should go in a central business district. But and I've got some written comments that I'll leave with you when I'm finished here.
Are they the same ones that were in file already?
No, I brought a brief which summarizes our comments. I'll hand it up to you shortly. One of the concerns that the members of my organization have is that the proposed boundary line adjustment is going to leave a no man's land, or a no person's land, to be more politically correct, in this area right here. Mr. Hearing Examiner, if you look on this map, this is actually a 8-foot wide strip that goes from the sidewalk to the building. The resulting boundary line adjustment will leave this orphan lot down in here with this little bitty piece of retail space designed to accommodate, to the extent that the proponent believes, the requirement that there be some retail associated with the building. But as a result of the boundary line adjustment, the area that is in front of the building will never front Pioneer Way with anything retail. It is not consistent with the Central Business District theme or any of the objectives for the Central Business District. I also want to point out that we shouldn't be shy about discussing some of the purposes for this boundary line adjustment. Again, reflecting on the comprehensive plan and the Central Business District purpose. In a letter that was submitted by the applicant, one of the reasons that the owner wants the boundary line adjustment approved is because under the proposed project funding, it will be necessary for all 50 units to be constructed to satisfy financing requirements. So this isn't about aesthetics as much as it is about satisfying the financing requirements that accompany the project. If the proponent can't get 50 units in that particular building because they have to comply with the Central Business District requirements, they're going to have financing problems. Now, all of these projects can be presented to look very attractive in renderings like this, and I have no doubt that the proponents are trying their very best to present a good view from the street. But the bigger picture is not that it's a pretty building, but it's in the wrong place. This is not a question of whether we're adequately caring for our veterans or our disabled individuals or our disabled veterans. It's about putting the building in the wrong place. That particular area was designed for mixed use so that we could promote retail and some other activities with some residential and office space above, not in the entirety of the building, and that's essentially what this proposal provides. Now, one other thing I want to point out, I previously made comments that I did not think that the boundary line adjustment should be allowed because it would not result in the second lot being buildable. That is not the criteria, as you probably know. The criteria with regard to dimensions, unfortunately, in the city code, there are no minimum dimensions for the Central Business District. So I just want to make it clear that my clients are not suggesting that the boundary line adjustment be rejected simply because the resulting lot in this no man's land here is essentially unbuildable, even though the applicant has argued that an 18-foot wide building could go in there at some spot. Our concern is the inconsistency with the comprehensive plan, the inconsistency with the Central Business District, and the way it is described in the city. I also, in the city code rather, I also have made brief reference to some right-of-way concerns that we have, and I'll ask you just to take a look at my memorandum after you've had a chance to mark it and review it subsequent to the public testimony. Thank you.
So you address those in there?
Yes.
name is Vivian Rogers Decker. I live at 51 South Pheasant Run, Coopville, Washington, 92339. I am an employee of the Oak Harbor School District. I am the student support specialist and the homeless liaison there, and I've held that position for the last 9 years. What I want to speak to today is the support of the development of this building and the need that exists in our community. I'd like to just clarify and share, and these you do not have, so I can leave with you when I'm done. This right here is a map that comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's a map that shows where you can have a food program in the community of Oak Harbor. All those little red areas that you see are areas where students qualify for a summer meal program. And the way that you qualify for a summer meal program is that you have to have 50% or more of your student population in that area qualifying for free and reduced lunch. So if you look closely at this map, what you can see is from Barrington down to the waterfront, that entire area qualifies as a free meal site. In fact, it's the reason that there has been a summer meal program at Flintstone Park for the last 7 years. The people that live in this community, we have anywhere from 88% of our student population to 46% of our student population that qualify for free and reduced meals. That means that financially their families are struggling and they need assistance in order to pay for food. Those families are struggling with housing too. They need that meal assistance so that they can stay in their housing. We need subsidized low-income housing in our community, no matter where we put it and what it takes to get it there. The majority of the people that live and work in this area that have children, they cannot afford to pay for food, so they need these meal service programs. They would qualify for this housing. All of them would meet the criteria to live in this particular housing. As a homeless liaison this year, I identified 246 students who qualified as homeless. Of those students, during our survey, we discovered that 107 of them are in that situation of being doubled up or living in an RV or unsheltered because they cannot find housing that they can afford. That's 107 students. Some 2, some 3 to a family, some 1 to a family, but all in a family unit. That means that there's more than likely at least 50 families that would qualify to live in this building. We desperately need this housing, and I am advocating that you support the development of this Lehigh project. Thank you.
Have somebody put this together with. Maybe she can recommend the person that spoke on it too, so she can add it to the exhibit law that's on point.
Hello, my name is Rick Chapman. My address is 1618 Southeast 8th Avenue here in Oak Harbor. I own a real estate company called Coldwell Banker Tower Properties, and I've been in that business as well as in the development and construction business for nearly 47 years. I'm here to speak in support of this mixed-use proposal and in support of Low-Income Housing Institute's application to create some much-needed workforce housing as well as affordable housing for our veterans. I believe this project should be approved for the following reasons. The city staff has recommended conditional approval of the site plan, boundary line adjustment, transportation concurrency, and landscape plan. This is because the project complies with the city zoning code and other ordinances pertaining to mixed-use projects in the CBD zone, including the requirement for first-floor retail space. The boundary line adjustment applied for meets the zoning code, and in fact, the separate lot along Pioneer Way is buildable. You can build an 18-foot deep building, no problem. We have another lot that we're just in the process of, we listed up in selling in downtown Oak Harbor that isn't very many feet bigger than this one. and it seems to be okay to build something on it. This project complies with the elements of the comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Harbor as it relates to affordable housing in Oak Harbor and relates to the city's commitment to the development of affordable housing. It's in line with the city's commitment to WLAD and fair housing. The project meets requirements of various state of Washington RCWs as they relate to development of affordable housing in our state. Not to mention that there is a dire need in our community for affordable housing that is conveniently located close to shopping and public transportation. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's Rick Chapman. This is Jim Cohen.
My name is Jacob Cohen. I'm an attorney in Oak Harbor. I've lived in this community for approximately 50 years. This is some of the most unusual progress I have seen in this community in 50 years. This community has neglected to provide adequate housing for people of low income, and especially for veterans. In the 50 years I've practiced law, a lot of my time has been devoted to land use problems for various reasons. I think great deference should be given to the fact that the staff of the city of Oak Harbor, who is probably more intimately aware of the contents of the zoning code, the comprehensive plan, and the needs of the community, should be given deference here. The staff has gone through all of the legal issues which are involved in this matter and has concluded that the proponent, through doing many changes to what they have submitted, have complied with the city's requirements. There are other people who disagree that the city staff has in fact done its job properly. The city code and the comprehensive plan and the state law, like any laws, can be subject to interpretation, and you can have two people look at the same thing and come to two different results. But the staff is the experts in this area, and I believe the great deference should be given to the fact that they endorsed the matter. And I would point out, if the hearing examiner is not aware of it, that there's been multiple changes made by the proponent in order to make the staff happy. The staff is not necessarily in favor or disfavor of this. The staff's job was to see that the project complied with the law. The law being the Oak Harbor Municipal Code, the Comprehensive Plan, and the State Revised Code of Washington rules and regulations which cover this subject. I served in the United States Navy for 8 years before I became a lawyer, and I have a great regard for veterans as a result of that, being one of them. And a lot of people here do not know that this particular development will supply 20 to 25 living units for military veterans, some of whom will be handicapped, some of whom will be disabled, some of whom will suffer both problems. And I feel great sympathy for those people. I was lucky. I did not end up that way, disabled or handicapped. But I feel for my fellow veterans, and I believe that this project will be of great assistance to them, and I support it.
Good afternoon. My name is Billy Cook, C-O-O-K, and I live at 651 Southeast Bayshore Drive in Oak Harbor. I did not attend the previous community meetings, so possibly my concerns that I'd like to address today have already been addressed, but I don't see it. As I say, I live on Bayshore Drive, which is the back of this project. And it seems to me that all the attention is being given to Pioneer, and Bayshore is being left out like a ignored stepchild. I noted on the map of the proposed Lehigh project that they have room for 77 cars or trucks to be parked there, and only one small easement driveway to exit their property. I feel that this is, in the best of times, going to be a bottleneck onto and off of their parking lot onto Bayshore. And what happens if there is a fire or a flood or a natural disaster? This could be turned into a hazard. I believe they should have 2 or more entry points to their property. Most of the other mixed-use projects on Bayshore do have 2 or more entry and exits from their property. So I would respectfully request the hearing examiner not approve this project or defer approval of it until at least this problem is addressed, because I can see that could be very dangerous. Nobody has actually looked into the impact of all this traffic onto Bayshore. I understand Lehigh did a traffic review, and they said that it would not significantly impact Bayshore at rush hour. But that is a very heavily traveled street. Parking there is insufficient, and you know, if they are allowed to turn right or left out of their parking lot, they could really snarl up traffic, and especially at rush hour. So that, again, is another problem that I think should be addressed. Also, I noticed that they are planning a pedestrian walkway down the hill to Howard Molly Park, with the intention of making it available for people to go to Windjammer Park. Sir, I live on that street, and I crossed it twice today, and pedestrians take their lights in their hands to cross Bayshore. There is no marked crosswalk on Bayshore between Dock Street and Pioneer Avenue. And I think that's another problem that needs to be addressed before approval should be given to this. Also, one of the problems for crossing that street, and we've already talked about, I guess people will be limited in their mobility, the speed limit on that street needs to be lowered. The residents on Bayshore have asked the city to lower the speed limit on Bayshore from 30 to 25 multiple times over the years, and they have never taken that into consideration. So again, I would respectfully request you not approve this project at this time until these problems are addressed and resolved. And thank you very much, sir, for allowing me to speak.
I'm Camden Schutte, it's S-C-H-U-T-T-E, business owner on Pioneer, as well as a property owner at 471 Southeast Pioneer Way, just west of this proposed site. I understand the need for the project. We've heard that a lot today. There's no question about need for housing. We're in the real estate business. We've seen the prices increase. We've seen rents increase. We understand the need. As a matter of fact, being a realtor, we advocate for personal property rights and use of property. But as a member of the community, I have many concerns. But the thing that I would ask today is that you take into account the precedence that was set in the construction of our building at 471 Southeast Pioneer Way. We were required to move our building to the property line that fronts on Pioneer, despite that property line being 4 feet away from the street. We had to work hand in hand with the city in order to gain access off of Pioneer, and we were able to do that despite our building being 4 feet from the street. I'm not speaking for or against the project in any way. All that I ask is that there be consideration into the precedents that have been set in other buildings that have been constructed on Pioneer Way. Like I said, I know the need for the project. We see it every day. When rents are where they are, I have family members that this project would be a benefit to. All I'm asking is that you please take into account other projects that have been done down on Pioneer as well. Thank you.
I'm David Sherman, address 3045 Scenic Heights Street.
Your last name?
Sherman, S-H-E-R-M-A-N.
Like the general?
Yes, absolutely. So, again, I am David Sherman. I'm a graduate of Oak Harbor High School with further education at Skagit Valley College and University of Washington. I'm a local business owner, construction development, consultant of land use and the same. Past board member, president of Oak Harbor School Board, and a member of and associated with Navy League, Skagit and Ivy County Builders Association, Building Industry Association of Washington, National Association of Builders, National Federation of Independent Businesses, among others. I'm here as a proponent of the Pioneer Way housing and mixed-use proposal, and to state my support for the Lehigh application for affordable housing on Pioneer Way to support our workforce and veteran housing needs. I support the staff recommendation as a positive recommendation for approval. I've been in construction and development over 30 years. In review, I find the proposal demonstrates that the use configuration complies with applicable city and state law requirements, meeting the city's comprehensive plan goals and policies, city zoning code, both the dimensional and parking standards, and the city's commitment to WLAD and fair housing, as stated in the staff's report documents and review of this project. Housing and rentals below $1,000 per month are needed. If you can find one, the conditions are less than what you would consider as reasonable accommodations. My daughter graduated from college, came back to work in her family business, got married. Her husband has 2 more years in Skagit. Nothing available. When something isn't available, it tells you where the void is. As a developer, our constant is how to achieve market rate affordability. In our housing supply, commercial supply, etc., we can't achieve this market rate under the existing conditions. We are unable to meet the provisions that Lehigh is meeting through their organizations. Thank you. And I'd like to submit my letter.
My name is Perry Taylor. I live at 90 Ponderosa, Oak Harbor. I'm a commander in the Veterans of War and Wars here in Oak Harbor. This affordable housing project is needed for the lower income veterans and up to 20 to 25 leased units. The many veterans who may be handicapped or have disabilities. This building does fall within the Revised Code of Washington 49.60, Washington Law Against Discrimination. Also the Oak Harbor Municipal Code 19.04.050, which is the city's acknowledgement of this requirement and to ensure that it does not discriminate against these protected classes. This will benefit our community veterans greatly. Thank you.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, my name is Bill Massey. My mailing address is 41 Northeast Midway Boulevard. I'm here in support of the staff's recommendation to accept and approve this project that's going to benefit our workforce in Oak Harbor and our veterans. We are a military community. I think we have an obligation when there's an opportunity to provide housing for veterans in particular disabled veterans and our lower income workforce to grab that opportunity and be flexible. I'd like to just read one element of Oak Harbor's comprehensive plan that I think is key, because our comprehensive plan requires under Housing Policy 1C that the city promote the inclusion of affordable housing developments through flexible development regulations. I think our development regulations are somewhat flexible. I think the staff has interpreted both our comprehensive plan and our municipal code correctly, and the project should be approved by the City Council. Thanks to all of you who are here in support of our veterans.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Tveit, T-V-E-I-T. I live at 651 Southeast Bayshore Drive. And I'm here to oppose the change in the zoning, mainly because of two factors. One was already, well, actually both were already spoken to already. One was the exit, or the driveway, if you will, for the building for 77 cars coming onto Bayshore, right at the ballpark area, and so close to the interchange of City Beach Street. And that speed limit of being 30 miles an hour will cause a lot of traffic problems, given that that's coming and going of cars all day long. The other piece is that in front, where the zoning change would occur, is to allow that gap of, I've heard 10 feet, I've heard 18 feet in front of the building, and that someone spoke to the fact that they could build on that site. Well, if they do, if you take a look at the building proposal, that would block all the windows on that site to the proposed building. So nobody's going to build on that, or you're going to have a fight about who gets the zoning to block off the light to those windows. So I think that they should be held to the regulations as is, that they build up to Pioneer or adjust the size of the project so that the retail buildings can be put in there, or retail floor can be put in there. The other thing that was brought up earlier was that there are other sites for this kind of housing, and I would like to see more of this kind of housing in Oak Harbor and in Coopville, for the woman who spoke, that those kinds of things can occur and should occur, and we do have a housing crisis. But I don't think we're going to solve it with one building, giving it a gap of 18 feet so that we don't have retail on our main street. So I would think that they should be held to that, and more housing could be developed by this same group and some of these other sites that are within blocks of this site.
I'm Cynthia Jennings. I'm Island County's Veterans Coordinator. I just wanted to show my support in this housing project. I live at 1099 Paul Avenue, Oak Harbor, Washington, homeowner. I know hand in hand how many veterans actually need support, and I'm going to make it short because I actually have a 3 o'clock family of 8 that's homeless right now. But thank you.
My name's Rhonda Severance. My address is 1490 Southeast Pioneer Way. And thank you, Mr. Bobick, for being here today in the community. I'm not opposed to Lehigh housing. What I am opposed to is the boundary line adjustment on Pioneer Way. At the last meeting on the 11th, I attended that, and Robin stated that, actually, Sheriff Mark Brown, retired Sheriff Mark Brown, asked for a comparable Lehigh building that we could go look at and see how it mixes into the neighborhood. So I went to Olympia for 2 days, and there is a Lehigh building in Olympia. It's not on the waterfront. It's probably 3 blocks from the waterfront, no views. But the entire lower floor is all commercial, the whole city block. And I think this boundary line adjustment is just so we will not have commercial on our beautiful downtown walkway. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Fee Mischo, M-I-S-C-H-O. We were fortunate enough to be stationed here 10 years ago, and we've really become part of this community. My address is 1342 Western Drive. I'm here for ECAP. We are a state-funded low-income preschool, and we serve 80 families a year, and that's in Oak Harbor alone. I see this greatly benefiting our families to where they have access to the transit line. This encourages local shopping, which we all want to see more of. This will get families out into the parks, onto the streets, actually taking advantage of walking, enjoying the waterfront, because definitely financial status does not deserve what view you have. Paycheck does not signify your worth. This will also encourage work within the community that is seeing a lot of the wildlife, the planting, incorporating the downtown, because I just don't want to see more businesses. I want to see actual families that are taking advantage of the businesses that are already there. So I definitely support this, and it would be a great benefit for our veterans and for our families and for local money coming into our businesses. All right, thank you. Have a good day.
My name is Sheila Davies, and I'm a realtor. I live at 1962 Northeast Sumner Drive in Oak Harbor. And I'm also a member of the Grace by the Sea Church, which is on Pioneer Way. My concern is, I've heard many people talk about this benefits for the veterans. I understand that the parking will be underneath the units. And unless there's elevators in the units, I don't know how the disabled can benefit from these units, because they certainly can't hike on the stairs to go up with the other units. And also I hear a lot of conversation about families, and the units are very small and few bedrooms, so I'm not sure how families will fit into the units. But my greatest concern, of course, is that we're not following what the rules and guidelines are for the CBD district, which is supposed to be for economic growth and planning for the future. And if we change this at this time and not follow what the comprehensive plan is and what the people of Oak Harbor who worked on that committee to design the comprehensive plan was in GMA, if we change the rules and regulations, then how will we ever be able to enforce other rules and regulations if we change it for this project? Thank you.
My name is Sharon Weiser. I'm the Executive Director of Island Senior Resources. I'm here to speak strongly on behalf of the Lehigh Project. Having just conducted a needs assessment across this island related to the needs of low-income seniors, and many veterans included in that, along with adults that live with disabilities. I see this as a critical need, and certainly in the city of Oak Harbor. I strongly urge that this project move forward and build the 51 units as a starter here in Oak Harbor to comply with comprehensive plan elements that urge for the approval and inclusion of this kind of housing across Oak Harbor. And I look forward to being of whatever support that Lehigh or the city of Oak Harbor may want to make sure that this kind of facility is created. It is an absolutely huge need.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Livermore. I live at 1665 Vernon Place, Oak Harbor, Washington. Been a resident of Oak Harbor since 1982. I have a business downtown. And I would just like to, I agree that we really definitely need long-term housing. But my concern is that if we allow a building to go in that does not meet the code and the requirements of the CBD, and let this project go through without meeting those guidelines, how is that going to affect all the empty spaces, empty lots that are downtown? Are other builders going to come in and pretty soon we have no retail on the main floor downtown, main street downtown? There are empty spots, and I hate to see that the whole downtown economic vitality disappear because we allowed one building to go in, so everybody else can think they can get that variance as well. Thank you.
My name is Mercedes Weiler, F as in Frank, U-L-W-I-L-E-R. I live at 1628 Northeast Sumner Drive in Oak Harbor. As the daughter, wife, and mother of veterans, I certainly want to see them provided for in our community. We all know that there's a huge homeless problem. We need to get that solved. My concern is that we have really smart architects, we've got great city staff that knows it. Why can't we have both? Why can't we get the retail on Pioneer like it belongs and have it in there? Let's relook at the project. Let's make it work. I understand there's problems. Please don't allow this variance. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to be heard? Staff want to respond to any of that?
Thank you. I just want to touch on a couple of main points I think that were brought up.
State your name for the record.
Sorry, Ray Lindenberg, Associate Planner. First of all, what we're doing here is not a variance. There is no zone change happening. We're looking at a site plan and a boundary line adjustments and other associated permits that go along with that. As far as the review of the project, I have reviewed it. Staff has reviewed it in the planning department. Legal department has reviewed it. Our engineering department has reviewed it. It's been reviewed many times. There was concern about traffic and exiting on the Bay Shore. I can assure you that has been reviewed. All of these things have been poured over in significant amount of time spent on it and working back and forth with the applicant on that. As far as the comprehensive plan, that is something that we have to balance as far as the development and our code, how that applies. How the design regulations and guidelines apply. The codes or the comp plan says that we have to provide affordable housing, and that's what we're trying to do. But at the same time, the zoning code doesn't talk about income and affordability and cost of a unit. It talks about units. And from our standpoint, this is a mixed-use building. It has the commercial component, it has that commercial component on Pioneer Way, and it meets the code in those from that standpoint. The boundary line adjustment was applied for, and that doesn't mean that it's a precedent that's going to happen in future properties, because those properties may or may not be multiple different parcels, and that's really the key difference here. So I just wanted to kind of address some of those things. If you have any questions, Mr. Bellamy, I'd be happy to help with that.
No, I haven't. I read your 700-page file. Final comments, you're the one that has to carry the burden in the end, so you get to go last.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Again, for the record, my name is Richard Hill. Very much appreciate staff's response, and the applicant agrees with Mr. Lindenberg's analysis. Just a few additional points. One of the issues raised in public testimony related to the boundary line adjustment. I know the examiner has reviewed the 700-plus pages, so I won't belabor what's contained in the record. There's just so much an examiner can be asked to do, but I did just want to refer in the record to the locations where those issues are specifically addressed, both in the design packet that Lehigh submitted as well as in the staff report. The design packet that Lehigh submitted, the BLA compliance is referred to at pages 4 to 9 of that packet. In the staff report, it is addressed at pages 13 to 14 of the staff report. Another question raised was related to the pedestrian-oriented frontage of the proposal. That is addressed in the design packet at pages 16 to 19. And then a third question that was raised related to compliance of the proposal with the mixed use criterion of the code, and Mr. Lindenberg briefly addressed that a moment ago, but that is addressed in the Lehigh packet at pages 20 to 23, and in the staff report at pages 3 to 4.
So when you say packet, what are you referring to?
In terms of the Lehigh packet, that's attachment 3, and that's the large packet that we produced for you, hopefully in more legible form. And then, of course, the staff report, the examiner knows what that refers to. One of the comments related to whether or not affordable housing was relevant to the city's review of the proposal, and I think Mr. Lindenberg correctly stated that the zoning code doesn't on its face address affordable housing or the income of the tenants, which of course is true. With that said, the comprehensive plan policies do affirmatively require in a situation like this for the issues of affordable housing to be encouraged and addressed, and the staff report acknowledges that in the staff report and has properly interpreted and applied those comprehensive plan provisions. Also, as one of the public commenters pointed out and as stated in my letter in the record, the Fair Housing Act, both state and federal, is applicable here. There is a duty on the part of the city to accommodate housing for veterans who are a protected class under the Fair Housing Act. Again, the staff report, while not specifically referring to the Fair Housing Act, appropriately accommodates those interests. Finally, there were questions raised relating to traffic, transportation, and ingress and egress. And as Mr. Lindenberg pointed out in his testimony, I got your name right, Ray, didn't I? Okay. Pointed out in his testimony, there's nothing worse than misstating the staff's name. Anyway, so as he's properly stated in his testimony, those issues have been thoroughly reviewed by the experts at the city and poured over, in fact, and the applicant has responded to all questions. Respectfully request that the examiner recommend a positive decision by the City Council. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Put in a crosswalk.
I'm here to declare the record closed, and apparently I have more reading to do. And I will get a recommendation with some written explanation of where I'm coming from and what my decision on the recommendation of the council is within a couple of weeks. And then it'll be up to your city council to decide what to do with this. So you can go off the record.